All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Valerie Holmes. I'm the Assistant City Engineer for the Traffic Engineering Division here in Greenville. This is the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Kickoff Meeting for the West Tallulah Drive Study Area. I would like to thank everybody who has taken time out of their busy schedule to join us this evening. We will use this time to cover the process of traffic calming and to answer any questions that you may have. So you should see some semblance of a screen that looks like this. The participants and Q&A buttons should be down in the lower right-hand corner. If you have a question to ask, just press the Q&A button and you can type your questions in the box, and we will answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to speak, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and I will call on you. And you're welcome to, ask any questions that you have about the process. To unmute yourself, you can press the unmute button. And to remute yourself, you just hit the mute button. So with that, this is the map of the study area. It's West Tallulah, West Augusta Place, and Oakview, with a small portion of Westminster Drive included in that. This information can be found on our website if you're interested, or if you have other people that you know who would be interested in looking at this information. So to give you an overview of the process, how did we get here? Basically, they all start the same way. Somebody calls our office requesting information about how to slow traffic in their neighborhoods. So we get the request, and then we will send out an application asking for a little more specific contact information and the types of problems that people are seeing. We then send out a petition upon receipt of the application, and it takes 50% of the signatures of the households in the neighborhood to basically get us to the kickoff meeting, which is where we are tonight. So enough interest has been shown at this point to warrant having the kickoff meeting. And so after tonight, where do we go? At the conclusion of the meeting, we will update the website to accept people to sign up for the study team. It is a neighborhood-driven effort to come up with a plan, and so you'll be given the opportunity at the conclusion of the meeting to sign up for the study team. The city will go out and within the area basically collect vehicle counts and speeds so that we can get an idea of how much traffic is actually on the roads, whether or not it meets the thresholds for traffic calming devices. And then once that data collection is complete, then we will submit that to the study team, and it will be up to those members of their community to come up with a plan. We go back and forth several iterations to flesh out the plan, make sure that it's possible from an engineering standpoint, and then it goes to a vote in which the residents of the neighborhood get to vote on the devices. And then anything that passes will be scheduled for installation. So again, what data is collected? We look at the average speed of the vehicles in the neighborhood. We also look at what's called the 85th percentile speed, which is basically 85% of the drivers are doing that speed or less. And also what we call the average daily volume, how many vehicles on an average day are using each street. We collect the data on either Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday. It's a 48-hour vehicle count. And we do this during the school year so that we can get the most typical data that we can. We generally feel Mondays and Fridays are not typical days. And in summertime, the traffic volumes drop off due to school being out of session. So we do limit our data collection to during the school year. So then we go to the plan. Who develops it? Again, that's the study team that's comprised of residents of the neighborhood with some engineering oversight. And then you can go and check the progress of your study area on the website at publicinput.com/West Tallulah. We keep that up to date with how far we are in the process and where we are and where we're going. So the streets that are eligible, they have to have a minimum vehicle volume of 300 vehicles per day, but less than 2,500 vehicles per day. And generally, what goes into the plan, it's up to the study team to decide how they want to address the issues within their neighborhood. But generally, we look at the speed humps, as you can see in the picture on the top, or the landscaped islands, which are shown in the picture on the bottom. These are other traffic calming devices that can be considered. It was sent out in the packet that was received by the person who called our office. It is also on our website. If you have any questions, you can certainly look these terms up on Google to get an idea of what they look like. But generally, the speed humps and the landscaped islands are the most popular devices. Speed humps are most aggressive in slowing traffic down through the neighborhoods. Some things to keep in mind in preparing the plan. We do have spacing requirements for the speed humps, generally about 400 to 450 feet apart. When planning your traffic calming devices, you need to keep in mind that each speed hump will add approximately 8 seconds of response time for emergency vehicles. They do have to slow down to go over the speed humps, and that's just something that people don't necessarily think about when they're plotting where they want their speed humps to go. So that's just something else to think about. We also have to install signage with our speed humps. We mount the signs at the corners of the speed humps to mark the exact location. It helps with, in the event of a snow, it helps our snowplows know where the speed hump signs or the speed humps actually are. That is a new requirement. So you may see around town speed humps that don't have the signs at the corners, but going forward, this is how we install them. So you may keep in mind that if there's a speed hump going up in front of your house, there will be signs with it. So keep that in mind in preparing the plan. Landscaped islands, anything that, any of those that might be planned, the adjacent property owners have to approve or give permission in writing for that, because on-street parking will be restricted adjacent to those landscaped islands if the road is not wide enough. So we do have to get written permission from those property owners. Another device that we allow is called speed cushions. They're basically, they don't go across the full width of the roadway. They allow wheel paths to not slow down the emergency vehicles. Keep in mind also that while emergency vehicles can pass unimpeded, so can the big FedEx and UPS trucks as well. And sometimes they are the worst offenders when it comes to speeding. So how is the plan voted on? We prepare a ballot. Each item that is proposed by the study team is listed individually and voted on individually. And each item that gets a 70% or greater affirmative vote based on the number of votes that we receive will be scheduled for installation. The people that get to vote within the neighborhood is anyone over the age of 18 or a licensed driver within the household. The installation schedule is determined by the backlog of work that the streets crews have. There's a lot of other neighborhoods that are getting speed humps put in, so we are looking right now at about a 4 to 6 month backlog on installation. Once you reach this point, it generally takes 1 to 2 days per device to install once we get going, but we are seeing a backlog of devices that need to be put in. And with that, that is the overview of the traffic calming process. Again, you can visit the website to see where we stand, to sign up for the study team. And this is my contact information. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to call. I will be more than happy to answer anything that you have. And with that, I am happy to open it up to questions for anyone that has anything to ask. Mr. Greer.
Hi, Paul Greer calling, resident of West Augusta Place. Does this study take into account the implications for Westminster Presbyterian Church? On the far south side of Westminster Drive, there is parallel parking at all times other than Sunday mornings, and there is the drop-off for the Westminster Weekday School. Are those dynamics taken into account in your study?
Is that area included within the study area? I don't have, I showed the map at the beginning of the presentation, but I don't specifically know if that portion that you're speaking of is included within the study area. That is something that I can look into, but it is something that we would consider as part of whether or not a device is possible from an engineering standpoint.
Yeah, I believe it would be, at least part of that would be because that part of Westminster Drive would be between Oakview and West Augusta Place. So I believe it would be within that study area. Thank you.
Okay, that is something that we will take into consideration when looking at the plan. Again, we don't prepare the plan. It's up to the study team. So that may be something that the study team would consider in preparing the plan, but in reviewing it, we would also look at it as well.
So I guess my question is actually, as I heard your description of who gets to vote on this, I wonder if the organization of Westminster Presbyterian Church, full disclosure, I'm a trustee at at Westminster Presbyterian Church, but if it's only the residents, would the church not also have a voice in this plan, given that it would have impact on the church and its membership?
The neighborhood traffic calming is geared towards the residents of the community. I know the church is not a business entity. I understand that, but we focus basically on residents and not other interests, if you will, business or otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay, so there is a question from Ms. Kimberly Newton stating there is a speed hump on Westminster. Oh, you need to, okay. In just a second, I'll see if I can unmute you. Are you unmuted?
Paul, there is already a speed bump on Westminster. So if you were talking about adding more, I could understand, but there's definitely a speed bump on Westminster. It's a little bit further down than the area between Augusta and the next street, but there's already one on the street.
Right. In fact, there are two of them on Westminster. The concern that I was thinking about would be landscape islands, which would, if on Westminster Drive, would significantly reduce the width of that and would have implications for Sunday parking.
That would be near impossible with the parking permits that have already gone out there, would be my guess. But I'm certain that something that, to your point, Valerie, if you looked at, you could probably help ease the concerns from the church with the way that parking is set up there. It would be near impossible to even think about islands there.
Okay, great.
I would be inclined to disallow an island in that location if that's the consideration that's being given.
Okay, thank you.
It's probably a two-part question. On Augusta, and I'm certain probably some of the folks on Tallulah may have the same concern, but there is a very steep hill. And so as these concerns are being addressed, right, is there some type of, management for water flow? Because we're at the bottom of the hill and we have the sewer. We're just slightly concerned, although supportive of the concept, we're a bit concerned that we could run into an issue with water flow, which we've just invested quite a bit of money to stop water flow into our yard because we were getting our yard washed out. Is there something that, because my husband is concerned that with the speed bumps, it would push all the water to the sides and create heavier flow. We don't have a curb at our house, and so it really inflows to our yard when it rains. And so is there some type of consideration for water flow with these studies as well?
To an extent, yes. when we go out and measure for the speed humps, we have also been asked by our in-staff mobility coordinator to leave some additional room on either side of the speed hump for anyone interested in cycling along the street. Bicyclists tend to not like having to go over the speed humps. And so we do try to shorten the speed hump up to an extent to allow for the safe passage of bicyclists. And I think a side effect in doing that means that the speed hump would be short enough such to allow adequate flow of water around the speed hump. It's not going to pool at the speed hump, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that or offset speed humps. We've seen at the Cleveland Park area, they have the offset speed humps. Where we've lived elsewhere, we've seen split speed humps. To your point about the 8-second delay, they're split to the width of the emergency vehicles so that they can center up and go through them. I mean, I've seen it done different ways. We're just really,
Yes.
we've just invested quite a bit of money trying to address what is a significant issue for our yard. And so that's one of the concerns.
Sure.
We just wanted to understand how it would be addressed.
Yes, and I think that having, like I said, allowing the shorter length, we're trying to get away from having the speed hump go all the way across the road to the edge of pavement. The speed hump would never be from the face of curb to the face of curb. It may be to the edge of the pavement, but again, it would be shortened up from that. So at the very least, one side of a vehicle has to go over the hump, while the other may stay, level on the ground. But we will consider, drainage issues when we're measuring out and sizing the speed humps.
And then the second question, we have and I guess it would kind of depend, and maybe I misunderstood, but the placement in general of the speed humps, the connection between Augusta Place and Tallulah has a little bit of a uniqueness to it from my experience in Greenville, in that it's got kind of a tight turn. And, we often see traffic jams in this turn, but people, when there aren't traffic, we see them taking it at pretty high speeds. It's one of the concerns that, has us supportive of this. How does that consideration get brought into a study like this?
As far as the geometry of the roadway and placement of humps?
Yeah.
Well, not knowing the geometry off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me. We don't generally put speed humps in curbs. I'd have to, if you're more than welcome to send an email to me, kind of more detailing the concern that you have. And we can certainly talk offline. I don't want to answer or misunderstand your question without having, a schematic right in front of me to address that. But we do look at the geometry of the roadway and try to put it in places where, it's not going to create a hazard for vehicles that are driving over them.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these unique locations that there's a handful of us that live near it and just kind of see it and watch it with the kids in the neighborhood. It's kind of one of those areas. There's no curbing on the side, so I'll be happy to send you a picture of it as well. Just wondering if it has to be something different because of the way the test gets set up. I would hate to see there be some type of skew for that. So,
okay, yeah, I look forward to discussing that more.
That would be great.
Okay,
thank you.
Sure. All right, Ms. Lauren Dayu says, I want to second the concern about the turn at the bottom of the hill. Trucks have sped around the corner and narrowly missed children. I can certainly understand that concern. I would like to state and kind of reiterate, I've had other neighborhoods come to me asking for speed humps to allow, slow traffic down to allow their children to play in the streets. That is not the intent of the traffic calming program. I can't advocate or endorse children playing in the streets. I can certainly understand creating slower traffic conditions for, general use in the neighborhood, walking along the street and all that. But I just wanted to make that clear. That's not the position of the city. However, we do want to create a safe environment for the families and residents that live in the neighborhood. So All right. Mr. Greer, is your hand up or?
Well, I didn't intend it to be. It might
Okay.
be, but
I wasn't sure. I just didn't want to miss. I didn't want to miss you again if you had another question. That's all.
but since you asked,
Sure.
and I don't live right there at that curve, I think it would be generous to call that connector between West Tallulah and West Augusta Place a street. It's really more of an alley. It's always been a mystery to me that that can be considered a city street when it is as narrow as it is. So I would echo my neighbor's concerns about that. It is extraordinarily narrow.
And it may be that we don't collect data on that particular street unless we're requested. The idea behind the minimum 300 vehicle per day threshold is that anything less than that is generally, it's the residents of the area that are using the street, and there is some expectation of self-policing, if you will. You know, we would hope that the residents who live in the area would contribute to safer conditions. We know that's not always the case, but that's the reason behind the 300 vehicle per day threshold at a minimum, is because anything less than that, it's the residents of the area that are using it, and not like vehicles cutting through or what have you. All of that is to say that if it's an alley, like you say, then I seriously doubt you're meeting that 300 vehicle per day threshold. So I may not be inclined to collect data unless I'm specifically requested to, in which case I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Oops. All right, Ms. Newton.
Yeah, just maybe one other point. We've only lived here, I think, two and a half years now. And on at least 3 occasions, this street becomes a bypass for Augusta, which is part of the challenge. And so I completely agree with Paul's point. It shouldn't be that road it's not curved, it's not wide enough, but it does connect between the 2 streets. And this street has been used as a bypass, you know, twice that I know of, for the unfortunate event that happened at the end of the street, but I've seen it happen at other times. And I think that's another point of consideration, that if this street can become bypass for Augusta Place, you know, it's not designed for that. The city doesn't close the street down in Augusta. They literally started routing traffic through our neighborhoods. That won't be considered in the study. And so is there, you know, any considerations that you can give us to help us, you know, make it so those kinds of things won't happen? Because when I hear 300 cars a day, I don't count traffic in my neighborhood. I think it's possible, but when I think about the fact that the city can, at their leisure, decide to reroute traffic through this neighborhood, it's not about children's safety. It's about anyone in this neighborhood being out in the street when those things are happening. These roads are not set up to be Augusta.
Sure,
Augusta
absolutely. Road. What I would encourage you to do is, anybody who signs up for the study team, you know, reach out to me. Just if there are specific concerns that you have within the study area, I can certainly take a look at those. I think that would probably be the best way to do it. I will set up a distribution list of the study team members and communicate through email. That's my primary method of doing so, simply because it allows me a paper trail. The other thing I wanted to mention that I did not before is, I can't stress how important it is that whoever does sign up for the study team, that you communicate with the neighborhood as a whole. Traffic calming can be very controversial. I actually received an email from a woman who, she doesn't want speed humps within the neighborhood, and she wasn't able to attend tonight because she doesn't have a computer, but she wants to have a voice. And so it's very important that neighbors, you know, the study team reaches out to their neighbors, let them know what you're thinking, get the feedback, because not everyone can be on the study team. It needs to stay manageable, but those citizens are the point to, you know, between the neighborhood as a whole and the city, and kind of, going back and forth, filling that role, the communication is extraordinarily important. So, any other questions? All right, well, I'm not seeing any. Again, this is my contact information. If you think of anything that you want to ask after the fact, please feel free to give me a call. I keep normal business hours. I can respond by email, whatever you need. I'm here to help you. So again, thank you very much for attending tonight. And if there's nothing else, then we will consider the meeting adjourned, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you.